Thank you. So I guess I'd sort of dissect the question, how would you like council to be involved going forward? Well, first of all, again, council are elected representatives, so their job is to represent, which means their interaction with the people is key. Cheerleading, perhaps, as Councillor Fry has described it, although I think that can be teased out a little bit more. But we're also, as well as representatives, we're leaders, and we should be leading by example, I think, as we look at this momentous exercise going forward. I do think it is important because the city as a body is the sum of its parts. And we do live in a city of neighborhoods, and whether we take those down to, the 100 neighborhoods, 105-minute walkable catchments up to the 50 more regulated neighborhoods, the 25-ish that the city considers local areas, the 5 major zones, up to the aggregate of the city-wide plan. But it is the sum of its parts, and we do need to, we can aggregate up, starting with the most granular, the most grassroots level, and bring it upwards. So we all live somewhere in the city, and it did make sense, notwithstanding Councillor Carr's remarks commenting on Dr. McAfee. There has been discussion of things like wards and other forms of more direct representation at a hyper-local level, and it seems like to me that there might be an opportunity to innovate a bit in this regard. I don't think we need to be afraid of our residents. I am a bit concerned about the notion of that people are being lobbied in such a way that would detract from their ability to be representative. But I think it's something as representatives that we have to look at interacting with the public, as Councillor DeGenova described the people that we represent. So just as I believe we need to look at that map and go from 100 to 50 to 25 to 5 to 1, if you're imagining that, so too do we need to look at the various types of organizations laterally. We've talked about the schools, elementary and secondary. We've talked about community centers, libraries, BIAs, faith-based organizations, the MST, various different ethnic groups and communities of interest. But as we gain our understanding of each of those vertical, then we need to look at how they're playing themselves out throughout the fabric of the city. Because it is that kind of detailed knowledge that is important. Yes, we need a global view of Vancouver as a city, but as a council, I think we have to realize that it is key that we be getting as granular as possible, and that's why I keep coming back to this. If we could get 100,000 people involved in 1993, surely we can really do a stellar job of getting people engaged here. And yes, it is council as the representatives of the people that are the best cheerleaders and the ones that would lead people forward on that. So participating in key events, innovating with neighborhood organizations, talking further about the parameters, the outcomes, and the deliverables. I mean, the plan itself is a process, but what are the deliverables? What are we expecting to see? Is it a vote at the end? Is it a document? I tend to see it as more of an emergent process over time that's going to set a framework that will continue to evolve over time. Those are the best plans, are the ones that evolve over time. And then that brings us to the question of how the existing plans are going to factor into that. We did have a very excellent community planning process begun in the 90s that unfortunately, I would argue, because of lack of or conflicting political will and turnover and changes, never got to fully play itself out. And that was 25 years ago, and there were lessons learned to carry that forward, but they can also inform what we've seen in what when we had our briefing on Monday. There were a bunch of plans listed in there that we are treating as a fait accompli. These were plans that were set in place over the last decade. And people have touched on that variously here. Because these plans are creating the conditions precedent on which we are moving forward. And so I think it is incumbent on us as a leadership group to be getting through that sooner than later. And that's why 2 years, to me, I would like to see that coming to that point faster, because as it's been pointed out, if that doesn't happen, the rules of engagement that are existing now under the plans that have been created over the last decade will continue to play themselves out. So that, to me, is a fundamental question that we have to get out, because are we maintaining the status quo? And if not, how are we going to move forward?
That's good.
So I'm going on like this because obviously I've thought a lot about this. My historical background, my academic and professional areas of interest are very much in this area. So I'm part of me saying this as a council member. The other part of me is saying it as Councillor Hardwick, someone that geeks out on this stuff. So I want to be as involved as I can in the process, because I think it is the most important transformational thing we can be doing for the future of this city. And I would just encourage all of council to be the best cheerleaders that they can be for this exercise with our residents, and lead by example.
Good.
So
Great.
that's what I think we should do. Sorry for going on a bit long.
Well,